Hi there. I'm going to walk through how to do some advanced functions using Excel. And we're going to hit a lot of functions in this. So this video might be kind of long. This might be one of those you want to take a break in at some point. But I'm going to go through these, and I'm actually going to start down here on row 35. And you have this same file available to you if you've downloaded it. But just know that you don't have to complete this part of it. There is a quiz on a future tab down at the bottom that you will have to complete, but doing these activities might be helpful. It might even be more useful for you to listen to the video on your phone and then try to do this with me on your Chromebook. So we're using Excel online. So we're not going to have some of the same buttons we would have in the full-blown version of Excel, which if we were in the classroom, we would have a formulas tab, and the formulas tab would have a bunch of books in it. That's not provided in the online version, which is really unfortunate when you're doing advanced functions. But the good point is that in our testing software anyway, you can type in the function and accomplish that in that same way. So anyway, without further ado, we're going to pop into doing some different functions. Starting with line 35, we have students and their placements and how many hours they're going to work a day at two different locations, which means we are going to be adding up the number of hours. So we're going to look at high school, for example, and for every student who works at the high school, we want to add up their numbers that they're working. And then for every student who's working at the junior high, we want to add up those. And we're not going to go choose which cells. We're going to use what's called a sum if. So here's the formula or the function and the way that works. As always with formulas and functions, you always put an equal sign. And then whatever that function is. Sum if, and there it pops up, and then open parentheses. And then Excel gives us, and Google Sheets does this also, the format that we need to follow. So it says here, range, criteria, sum range. So the range is, what is it we are looking up? Okay, so we are going to look up high school or junior high right here, okay? And then I'm going to say comma. And then it says criteria. So what is the criteria? Well, the criteria here are the words high school. That's going to be in quotation marks because it's text. High space school, just like it is over there. You must spell it the same way. Comma. And then it says sum range. So where are the numbers we're going to sum? Where are the numbers we're going to add? And that's going to be this column here. That's where the numbers are. So it's nice because it color codes it. So we're saying, look in the blue, look up high school, and if it says high school, add those numbers in that area here together. Now I'm going to close my parentheses and hit enter, and the correct answer there is 10, and that is correct. To do the junior high, it would be the same thing. You would type in equals sum if and do the same thing. You can also hit the function button. That's this insert function button, FX, right here. If you just recently used them, they would be here, or commonly used rather, and then there should be all the categories, which would be little books in the other version. So if you were looking for an if function, those are generally going to be under, gosh, I don't remember, lookup on this one maybe. Gosh, I don't even remember. But anyway, it would be in here somewhere, and you could go look them all up that way. But if you know what function you're going to use, just type it in. Okay, I'm not going to do junior high hours because it's done the same as high school hours. But you cannot just drag this down. You actually would have to create this function again. Okay, let's look at an if with an and function. So here we have some students, their grades and their GPA. And we've got to decide if they're allowed to apply for, open this up, the grant. Or are they allowed to apply for the scholarship? And then let's look at the criteria. So to apply for the grant, the criteria is, first off, you have to be a senior. And then you also have to have a 10.0 GPA or higher. Oh, wait, that's for the scholarship. That's for this one. Okay, the grant is just anybody, as long as it's higher than a 10.2. So we'll do that one first because that's just going to be a plain old if statement. So we're going to go to the grant and we're going to say equals if and open parentheses. And what is the test? The test is you just have to have a GPA higher than 10.2. So where is my GPA for Nellie? It's right here in C48. So if C48, what's the logical test? What are we looking at? We're looking at C48 and we're making sure it's greater than 10.2. Okay, comma. If it's greater than 10.2, now we could do math here. So like we could say GPA times something if they were getting value that way. In this case, we're just saying yes or no. So if it's greater than a 10.2, yes, they can apply for the grant. And if it's text, text goes in quotation marks. Okay, comma, value if false. So if they do not meet that criteria, the value is going to be the word no. Close parentheses, hit enter. That should work out fine. At this point, we can pull the handle down because if we pull down, it updates the formula by going up a row, which means then it'll do Oprah on her row, Parker on his row, and so forth. So that's what you should have for this one. Yes, no, no, yes, no, yes. For the scholarship, though, we have two criteria. It's not just one. So we do have an if, but it has two criteria. So in this case, we're going to use an AND function inside of an if function. Now let me do the AND first. If I say equals an AND, which is what we would be doing on this one. So equals AND, we would have our two logical tests. So in this case, I'd look at Nellie and I would say the grade has to be, and they have to be seniors, so her grade would have to be a 12. 12's a number, so you just put the number. Okay, and what also has to happen, well, the GPA has to be 10 or higher. So that means GPA, C48, has to be greater than or equal to, because it says 10.0 or higher. So greater than or equal to 10. Okay? Now that gives us the AND part of this function. But unfortunately, AND functions don't let us say yes or no. An AND function just gives us a true or false. So it does say for true, it says true, but we need it to say yes. So we're going to edit this function. I'm going to go up here to the top and do it. So instead of just the AND, I'm going to have an if and then an open parenthesis, and the AND becomes the logical test. So this whole thing that was already in there is now the logical test. So I'm going to put a comma. Value if true. Well, the value if true is a yes. It's words, so quotation marks. Comma, value if false, no. And it would be like this. And then again, since we did it for Nellie, we pull this down to update it for everybody else. And you should have yes and then all no's. Okay? An OR function is identical to the AND function. It's just now, with an OR function, it's one of the things or the other things. So they don't have to have both. So with the one that was an AND, you had to have both of these met. With an OR, one or the other will work. So in this case, it's going to be an OR function, but an OR function evaluates to true and false, just like an AND function. So I could start off as doing this with an OR function just to show you what are the two logical tests. So the two logical tests are a 90 or higher in the class. So that means grade in the class, 90 or higher. So that's greater than or equal to 90. Oops. And then a comma, and then the second test. Or 95 or higher on the practice test. So here, 95 or higher, so it's greater than or equal to 95. Okay? So in this case, she meets the criteria on one, but not on the other, and that's okay because it's an OR. But like I said, with an OR, we cannot say the words yes or no. And in this one, we want the answer to be yes or no. So I'm going to pop in here, I'm going to double click to edit, and then instead of, or in front of the OR, but after the equal sign, I'm going to put in the if. The OR part that was already in there becomes the logical test, so comma after it. And then if it's true, yes. If it's false, no. Remember, those go in quotation marks because they are text and not numbers. All right, that's it. We pulled down because we evaluated Tom, but we need to evaluate everybody. And there's the answers for that one. Okay. So that takes care of those 3. And those are the easy ones, I guess you would say, on here. Now let's take a look at the VLOOKUP and HLOOKUP. VLOOKUP are vertical, like columns, and HLOOKUP are horizontal, which are rows. So in our case, we are going to be looking up some information here. So where it says fee, we have to look at this column. We have to look here to see what Amy is. She's a senior. We have to look at this column and determine what her fee is going to be. She's either a guest, an other, or a senior, and then by looking here, we determine which one of these values she's going to get charged. So that's a lookup. So in this fee column, or fee box, I'm just going to say equals. This lookup is going to be, notice it's on top of each other, right? So since it's on top of each other, this is an H lookup. Now, you could name this range. So like I could highlight this section and come up here and name it. So I could call it maybe cost, prom or something, and hit enter. Oh, sorry. I guess we can't do that on the web version. So never mind on that. On the actual computer, you would be able to name that range. We cannot do that here. So we'll just have to do this section as our table. So, all right, that's fine. So we're going to do an HLOOKUP because these are on rows. So HLOOKUP, open parentheses, the lookup value. What are we looking up? We're looking up this right here where it says JHS Senior, that box. Okay, comma. The table array, which basically is where's the table. If we were able to name the range like we can in regular Excel, we just put the name there. But since we can't do that here, I'm going to highlight this area. Okay. All right, comma. Then it says row index number. So where is the answer row? The answer is never in row 1, by the way, because we're always looking up row 1 or column 1. So it's never a 1. It's whatever the next row is usually, unless there's multiple rows after 2. So this is row 1, which is where it's looking up, but row 2 is where our answer is. So this would be a 2. Okay. And then there is a thing here. It says range lookup. That would be the word true or false. If it wasn't exact, like here, it has to be JHS Senior, which is false. And we don't have to put anything for false. So we can just leave that last one off. So it looked it up, and she is indeed getting charged $5. All right, here for the items purchased, here are the items. We want to look up in this table the cost of each of these items, and then we want to add them all up down here. So that's going to be a simple sum function. And we could go ahead and put that sum function in. So that's equals sum, open parentheses. We need to take the fee, and then put a comma here. And then we need to add all these in here. So we're taking the one cell, comma, and then the range. Okay. And then we're going to hit enter, and it's $5 because there's nothing in here at the moment. Okay. Now we're going to create this so that if we type in shirt, for instance here, it's going to tell us how much a shirt costs by looking it up vertically in the vertical lookup table. Okay. So that's going to be an equals VLOOKUP. Now we're going to run into a problem on this one in a minute, so we'll talk about that in a second. We're also going to need to copy this one down. So we're going to have to tell it to point to this table absolutely. So we'll go through that here too. Okay, VLOOKUP, open parentheses, if I can hit the right button. Lookup value, we're looking up shirt. We're looking up right there, comma. Table array, well, here's our table. It's absolute. So let's see if our keystrokes work. Okay, so F4 makes it an absolute value. See how it put dollar signs on all of those. So F4 for that absolute value, comma, column number for the answer. So this is column 1, this is column 2. So I put 2 in there. And it's an exact match, so we don't have to put anything else. Okay, so it looks up the shirt, and it says 20. And if we pull it down, it's all good till it hits that 4th one, and then we get this weird thing happening, and it's all kinds of mad. It's got this here, and it's got this here. And the reason is because there's nothing to look up, so it's confused here. So your textbook gets into what's called an if-error function, which is what we're going to do here. so that if the line is blank, this is just going to be blank. That way it won't mess with this adding up situation. Okay, an if error function is put around the current function, like we did when we embedded the or inside the if function. Okay, so up here, I'm going to put equals and then if error, and then open parentheses. And then here's what we're doing. We're looking it up. So that's the value. We're looking it up, comma. But if there's an error, we want it to put in just a space. So I'm just going to put quotation marks and a space bar and a quotation mark. And I'm going to close that up. Okay? So basically we're saying if you do the Vlookup and it's going to make an error show up, just give me a space. We hit enter. We have space now. And then we have that there. And technically, we should be using that one for all these, because if I get rid of a hat, that's going to mess this up too. So this if error function needs to be used on all of those. There we go. Okay? So that's an if error. And we never want to have a spreadsheet that's going to have errors that are showing constantly, because that's going to look awful, right? Okay, the last two on here are at the top, and these are the more complicated ones because these are nested functions also. So we're having to nest multiple things. Let's first off do a simple one. We need to count these. So we're looking at these airlines here. We're going to count how many of these are delta. This is just going to be counting them if they meet certain criteria. So equals count if the range, so where's the numbers, or where's the words rather, that's the range, comma, and what's the criteria? Well, it's delta. So it's text, so put it in quotation marks. And then that says if they're delta, count them. Tell me how many. And there's 4. And then same thing for frontier. Equals count if, open parentheses, same range, comma, and then frontier. Okay, so that's the easy part to give us the 4 and the 3. This long part here is going to be figuring out the status of these flights. So we have flights that have seats and they've had seats that are sold, and sometimes they sell too many. Or sometimes the flight is exactly full, or sometimes it's not full. Well, that's what this one's all about. We've got to determine how full this is going to be. Now, this is really honestly so much easier in the full version of Excel when we can use the little wizard that pops up. So if I hit OK here, all it does is bring this up. And in the full version of Excel, it would bring up the dialog box, which I think makes this a lot easier. So you're going to have to really follow me here as I show you how this works, because it's going to be an if function inside an if function. Okay? An if function inside of an if function. So first if function is if, and then we're going to look at something. I'm going to look at D9. You could actually do this multiple ways, to be honest. Oops. But I'm going to do it this way. So I'm going to say if D9 is greater than C9. Well, what's that mean? If D9 is greater, so if we sold 120 seats when we only had 115 seats, we're overbooked, right? So there's my logical test, comma. The next thing that pops up, it says is value if true. So if that's true, we've overbooked the flight, right? Okay. Now, comma. If it's false, then what? Well, it's either going to be full or there's going to be space available, which means we still have another if that we have to put in here. So first it's going to look and see if it's overbooked. Then it's going to do another if function, so I'm going to put in another if. So if it's false, run this if function. If, and then we're going to look at it again. We're going to say if D9 is equal to C9, okay? So if that's the case, if that's true, then the flight is full. We filled all the seats, comma. Now, if that's not true, the only other thing that can be true is that there's space available. So the value if false, if those first two things are both not true, then it's going to draw to the very end one. And now we can say space available. Now, I closed one set of parentheses, but this goes with this second if function, so I still have to close another set of parentheses. So this ends with 2 parentheses. And there we go. Now, since that just figured out this first Delta flight, if we drag down, it will do all of them, and then we should be able to see our 2 that have the same number are full, and then you've got all the ones that are overbooked and the ones that have space available. So I know that one's confusing. It is a confusing one when you're trying to embed multiple ifs inside each other. Let's go ahead and do one more of those. This is another nested if, and over here would be an average if. So let's do an average if first, the average pass score. So if they passed, well now, so we have to determine what's passing. So average if, let's put it in, equals, oops, sorry, I clicked on the wrong thing here, equals average if. So we're going to go over here and we're going to look at the amount here. Oh, I can't really do this yet because we haven't put the words in, but that's okay. We'll still do it. We don't have a number there, or we don't have the award there. If it's pass, so it doesn't have the word pass in there yet, but if it did, then we would average the numbers. And we would average the numbers that are here. So the average range would be this range here. Oops. There. So we're going to average them if we look here in this C27 to C31, and it says the word pass, then we're going to go over here and we're going to average those. Okay? So that's how that one's going to work. It's going to give us nothing right now. It's going to give us an error. And in most cases, this is where we would put another one of those if error functions in. I'm not going to right now because you already know how to do that, but you could put an if error in here so that if there's nothing entered, you don't see this error. Okay, but let's go ahead and set this average or this if to determine whether they failed, whether they were distinct, or whether they passed. So let's first off with the first if. So because this is going to be a double if function again. Equals if. What's the logical test? Well, we're going to look over here and say if B27 is, and then we have to decide what we're evaluating first. And I like to start with the bottom, which is why I listed this first. So if they did 49 or below, so if they were less than or equal to 49, then, well, they fail. Okay, comma. Now we move to the next one. Because now it's a value if false, but we have 2 to go, so we put in another if. So if B27, and then what's the second one? Well, the second one's a middle range, so that one's kind of hard to do. So let's move to the next one, 75 or above. That's easier. So if B27 is greater than or equal to 75, then they have distinction. Now, if it's neither of those two things, that means they fell somewhere between 50 and 74. So therefore, by the process of elimination, that last value, if false, is pass. Again, 2 parentheses because this closes the second if statement and this closes the first if statement. And then we hit enter. Now we actually have a score here, and we need to pull it down so we get all of them. And there we go. Pass, pass, distinction, pass, and fail. All right. That's basically the gist of this one. For my class anyway, what you're going to be doing, oh, I have many tabs as always, is you're going to be coming down here and doing this quiz. So you can use your information from those that I just did a demonstration on for you to try to figure out how to figure out all the rest of these. Now I'll give you some hints. First off, there is some YouTube specific help. If you go to this tab here and scroll all the way over, here are some videos that walk you through the various parts. So if you don't remember how to do something and you don't want to have to listen to me talk for 25 minutes again, you can go specifically to videos about these specific things. They're not mine, but you can watch those. Otherwise, some hints that I'll give you. So here, just think, we are counting how many of these people like Summer. So we're counting them if Summer is the one they chose. Okay. This one, we are averaging them if they are ladies. So we're looking at gender, and we're averaging the age of the ladies. So that's what this one's going to be. For the second one here, you're going to be using this lookup table. Okay, so here's your lookup table right here, and I'll try to remember to go back and make this like bold or give it a color or something so you can tell that it's the table. But basically, here's your table. So these are your lookup codes, and we're going to be looking up a number, and it will tell us which thing it represents. So it's going to look here and tell us what's in column 2, and it's going to give us that thing. So it's going to say banana on this one if you get your function in there correctly. Okay. The bonus, it says, is going to be 10% of the total sales amount if they sold over 4,500. Okay. So it's going to be looking at their fruit sales. So we're going to look at Art's fruit sales, and he's going to get a 10% bonus of his sales if he sold over 4,500. That means we're going to have to do math. So if they sold over 4,500, we're going to take this number here times 10%. Okay? And this is going to tell us how much money that's going to be. And that's in dollars, so I'm not telling you to tell me it's a 10% or tell me it's a 5%. I need the actual number. So this one's going to do math. When you do your value if true, it's going to be math, okay? It's going to look here times 0.1 or here times 0.05. The false, the final false, will be no bonus. So if it's not either one of these, then it's just going to show the words no bonus here. Okay, it may take you some time to figure out. You may have to poke around on it, but that's that one. Okay, and then this bottom one, same situation. We are looking again at various criteria. So we got people, we have genders, majors, and GPAs. We're going to look and see if they're honors eligible. So it's going to say yes or it's going to say no. So there's going to be an if function involved. Notice it says honor students have 3.75 GPA or higher. That's greater than or equal to 3.75. So it's going to be looking at the GPA, and if the GPA is 3.75 or higher, this will say yes. And if the GPA is not, if it's false, this will say no. Okay? And then this last one here is going to be an embedded if function. And if inside an if, we are looking at Walmart manager scholars. They have to be male. So that's going to have to be equal to an M. And M is a letter, so that's quotation marks. And they have to have a 3.6 or higher GPA. Okay, 3.6 or higher. That's greater than or equal to 3.6. So it has to meet both of those criteria in order for them to be able to get that one. Okay, so this is an if with an embedded function in it, and it's not another if. It's going to be something to allow us to have two criteria. It's male and it's a GPA. There are two criteria here, okay? And then the results are either going to say may apply or they're going to say not eligible. And I'll tell you what, if you put the criteria in here first, before you add the if, which is how I did it when I did an example for you, you're going to get true or false here. And then you're going to put the if around it so you can give it the words may apply or not eligible. So there's your hints on how to complete this. This particular assignment with your name and date will be uploaded. You'll download the Excel file and you'll upload that Excel file into Canvas for me to score. So again, this is a complicated unit. It is advanced functions. Take some notes, watch the videos, but these functions are what's going to be really useful. If you go to college and you do anything with the business, you're going to need to know these functions. So it's a pretty big, important one. I know, long lesson for you, but hopefully you did the practice activity with me, and then your homework here is to do the quiz.